Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name is Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, another bozo on the bus, and I care about it.
Yes, and I'm LouiLou. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm recovering for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. And each week we strive to foster a brave space where we can engage in conversations centered around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
Yes, but before we do that, please like, share, comment, and rate this episode.
Rate this episode. Give us as many stars as you can. Nothing less than as many stars as you can.
Kind of like keep going back and rating us.
Yeah, just keep and tell your friends about us, your family about us.
Absolutely.
Your exes about us, your in-laws. And now the disclaimer. The thoughts and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you. And of course, everything we talk about is for general information purposes only.
Absolutely. So today we are honored to have Dr. Rodriguez on the podcast, an esteemed clinician, educator, and advocate dedicated to supporting Latinx and LGBTQIA+ communities with over 2 decades of experience in social services. She has worked extensively in trauma, abuse, and family systems, specializing in culturally responsive care.
Dr. Rodriguez played a key role in shaping LGBTQIA+ mental health advocacy, co-authoring the Los Angeles LGBT Center's RISE Manual, a groundbreaking initiative to reduce heterosexism and anti-transgender bias in foster care. Currently, she serves as an administrative faculty member at Pacific Oaks College, where she coordinates both the Latinx family studies and LGBTQIA+ studies, marriage and family therapy programs. Through her work, she's helping to shape the next generation of clinicians while continuing to push for equity in mental health. We're thrilled to have her here to discuss education and recovery, trauma, and what it takes to truly support LGBTQIA+ individuals. Welcome, Dr. Rodriguez.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I was going to say, she sounds great.
Yeah.
But please call me Eugenia.
Eugenia. Okay. Hi, Eugenia.
Hi.
Thank you. We're already on first name basis.
Yes. We're already besties.
Besties. How's everyone doing?
Let's start with Eugenia.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. It's awfully misty outside today.
It is. I feel so damp right now. My
Yes.
armpits are sweaty.
Yeah, it's that
Is that the rain?
No, I will, because I just feel like my whole body just feels really damp. But how are you?
Not damp. I'm doing well. I actually bought this sweater today because I was not prepared for, and I used to live up here for about 7 years, and I totally forgot the chill that happens when the wind and the rain decide to be friends. So other than that, you know what? I am all right.
I don't think they're friends. I think they just are working together to get us.
That's true. Is the enemy of my enemy my friend?
Exactly. That's awesome. My week's been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Today's been fine. I worked a really long day today. Yeah, it was because I commute on Mondays and Wednesdays. So it was an hour there, an hour back.
Yeah.
It's not so bad. I listen to podcasts.
Oh, that's always fun.
Like that. Yeah.
I try never to spend more time traveling than I do there. So if I have to travel 1 hour there and 1 hour back, I'm at least there for 2 hours. I have to be there at least. That's the only way it feels worth it.
I love that algorithm. That's really good. So if you all don't mind, we're gonna jump in. Go ahead.
Doing amazing.
Oh, Louis.
I could.
Well, with all the talking you were doing, I thought you did tell us how.
Wow. I was like,
I was waiting for you.
Jab. Well, I was just going to share something significant today. Okay, so it had been over 8 years that I trained someone here at the club.
Oh,
and so it's like today, I had the great fortune of helping. If you don't know, the Castro Country Club is run on volunteers.
That's
we have
right.
3 employees, but the majority of the folks that you see around are volunteers. And so I had been trying to find a way to get back because, what happens when you recover is your life gets bigger.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I've been able to work it out, and it's really nice because I was a coffee jerk or whatever, like a barista. And once you have it, you don't lose it. And so like with love and anything else, the only way to keep it is to give it away.
Oh,
yeah.
That's quite wonderful.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm already feeling how this is gonna go.
No. I kid. So if I can start with their first question.
Sure.
So please tell us a little bit more about what inspired you to go into mental health, specifically working with LGBTQ plus folks.
First and foremost, I identify as a queer woman of color. I'm a Latina. I am a child of immigrant. I think that it's important to be able to see yourself in the work that you do. And so coming into school, you know, my mother was a secretary, my father is a mechanic, and they always told us your job is to go to school. So thankfully I was instilled to like just do something. And part of that was giving back. And the funny thing is, it's actually when everyone asks me, why do you want to be a therapist? Someone once told me that I might be good at this. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my bachelor's. And so I said, oh, well, maybe psychology. But I actually ended up getting a bachelor's in sociology with an emphasis on social action right here at the University of Notre Dame de Namur in Belmont. And then I had the minor in psychology. And I thought I was just going to do case management for the rest of my life. And I ended up falling into a meeting where one of my aunts was doing kind of this indigenous ceremony. And then in that, I met someone who was actually the head of one of the programs that I now run.
Oh, wow.
And so she had a conversation, very much. She had a conversation with me and she said, you know, I have this program. Would you like to apply? And so I applied, I got in, and, you know, 21 years in May it'll be, here I am.
Congratulations on 21 years.
Yes, it's been.
Yeah. So there's so much there. I want to hear a little bit more about what you said. Someone told you that you might be good at this. That sounds like a very pivotal moment. You
know what? It's so weird because I don't even remember like the person that told that to me. I just remember thinking, what do I want to do? Like, what do I want to do with my life? What is kind of my path moving forward? And since my parents said, you know, try education, see what you can do. You know, my dad always thought I would end up being a teacher. Full circle, I am a teacher now. But, you know, someone once said, oh, well, you're a really good listener. Why don't you maybe like counseling? And so I just kind of fell into that. And so when I was finishing with my bachelor's, I remember this one instructor, she was asking everyone, what do you want to do when you finish? What do you want to do when you finish? And I said, I want to be a therapist. And this woman looked at me, she's like, do you think you can do that with just a bachelor's? And I thought, wow. Of course. I said, well, of course not. But up until that moment, I didn't know because I didn't know anyone that was doing this work. And so after that, I started doing case management, met therapists, and I saw these kids I was working with that they would connect to me because of who I was, what I looked like, the things that I brought to the table that helped them open up more than to the therapist that maybe didn't have those connections with them.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I think I do want to do this. I think I can be okay with this.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like, and maybe this is like what I'm hearing in the subtext is that part of the motivation was your ability to connect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I worked with foster kids for over a decade. And a lot of the times, unfortunately, it was BIPOC kids and queer kids that were in foster care. And it broke my soul, not just my heart, it broke my soul. And so going into those spaces and saying, you know, I see all of you, not just the pieces that people want you to like fix, not just the pieces that say people are broken. I see all of you as a whole. Yeah. And it kept me doing what I am today.
When you mentioned that voice and not remembering, but then it's almost like a higher power moment. Like
almost, yeah. It's like it was like this in so I don't know if anybody speaks Spanish that's listening, but sometimes we tease about el gran dedo de Dios, like the great finger of God. And so it was one of those gran dedo moments where it's like, hey, you who's randomly deciding about your life, why don't you try this? And I said, sure.
I love that. Yeah, you know, you mentioned working in the foster care system, which I imagine came with its challenges. And so I'm curious about like, what are some challenges that you've come across in your work with LGBT plus youth? and not about the youth themselves or LGBT folks, but like the challenges you may have faced along the way.
I think one of the things, especially in foster care, people need to understand that you are volunteering to do this work as a parent. You are a foster parent. You are not a foster employee. Okay. And so when people go into these spaces and they treat the being a foster parent like a job, then they see everything through the lens of a job. So if the kid isn't listening, they're like, well, put them in another house. Or if they don't understand, they're like, well, we'll put them in another house. Or tell them, they would tell them, the kids, when I would go to the house, and they'd say, oh, tell them what you did. And I'm like, I am not an enforcer. I am not the person that, has to bring down the hammer. I am a support for them, and I'm a support for you. And for me, being a foster parent means that you are putting in a place as a parent. And so what do parents do? They shouldn't tell you, I don't want you because you don't look like I wanted you to look. You don't act like I wanted you to act. You don't believe what I want you to believe. A parent should be able to, parents don't come with a manual, but we should be able to work in spaces to navigate. That's why you get other services, case managers, peer specialists, therapists. And so for me, it was never the kids. I always think that kids are like water. They are going to fill the container they're poured into. And if your container is twisted and jagged, that's the kid that you're going to see. And so I would try to remind the parents, you're the one that's pouring them into that shape. Give them an opportunity to be another shape. Because everything that we learn as we're growing up, we reinforce it as we get older, because that's the only thing that we've ever known. So if I've only ever been poured into these twisted, jagged shapes, guess what? As an adult, I'm going to feel that I'm twisted and jagged.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I'm not going to know what it is to feel soft or what it is to feel smooth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're reminding me about like the harm that can be caused, when a young person is still developing. And it makes me wonder, like, what have you, I'm thinking about like the folks that you've worked with that you feel like have been able to get past those kind of issues, like the harms caused by parents, and what that has looked like. Like, what are some characteristics that they've had or the support that they had?
Well, it's interesting because I teach and I also work in private practice, but I always tell people one thing that we all have in common is that we were all children. And so one of the characteristics that I see in folks that have been able to kind of move forward is starting to understand who they are, not the shape they're poured into, but who they know themselves to be. And sometimes they feel like they have to get lost to find themselves again.
Yeah.
Sometimes getting lost comes with a lot of pitfalls. And so being able to find yourself, being able to learn how to love yourself, knowing that, perfection is a myth. And it is a myth that looks nice and fluffy, but it's surrounded by barbed wire.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can I ask a question? And I don't want to go too far because we have a lot to talk about. I was thinking about with your insight with regards to the role of the parents, especially in the foster care system, having that insight, were you able to help shape and maybe change attitudes?
Yes, I was. I feel privileged that I was able to be in that space. I think one of the things that's important is no one wants you to tell them that you don't know what you're doing. No one in the history of ever has been like, you know what, you're right. I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
So you have to come in as a support, and you come in and say that with a space that you don't want to argue. You don't want to tell them you're absolutely wrong. What you want to tell them is that there are other ways to do it. Because if you keep doing things this way and the results are not the results that you need, then maybe it's not the kid that's wrong. It's the approach that needs to be modified. Not fixed, because fixed denotes broken, but modified. Let's see how we can shift this. I used to do parenting classes, working with Spanish-speaking foster parents, where all we would talk about is LGBTQIA plus identity. This is this is the definition of this. This is the definition of that. This is what gender identity is. This is what it's not. And so I think for me, being able to have parents even show up to my parenting classes when I was doing that was a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, one of the things that's that I love about your story is that education kind of became this like way out, right? Like, and that was like reinforced by your parents.
Mm-hmm.
So could you say a little bit more about how education has been like a tool for you, and then also how education may have been a tool for some of your clients?
For me, education it's been the road for me to be able to learn who I am. It's been a road for me to be able to learn what I'm capable of. And there's different kinds of education. You know, there's the kind of education that you sit in a room, you listen, you answer questions, you write papers, and you know, if they say you've done it well enough, you go to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
But even that there's a cap. It's a terminal degree. Like a terminal degree is like it's the highest degree in whatever field that you're in. You know, so having my doctorate, you could say I've reached that level, but I know that the minute that I think that I know it all, I've already lost something that was important to know.
Right.
And so for me, education, it taught me to continue to be curious. And so the education in my life that I've had, my kids have taught me, my foster kids, my kids, and I say my kids, I mean my clients, even the adults, the kids, all of them, they've taught me more than I think I could ever give them. I always tell them, thank you for your gift to me.
Yeah.
You know, I want to help you. And I go in very clearly saying, I can't fix you because no one can fix someone else. I can walk with you in your healing. And my education taught me that, my life education, my formal education. And so what I want to do is I want to be able to help instill that into the people that I work with.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah, you're reminding me a lot of, so my grandmother, she's 80, and she was born in Puerto Rico, and the town that she's from, they had a McDonald's before they had a high school. And so the highest grade she completed was the 6th grade, and then they migrated to New York City. And so I share all of that to say that like my grandmother didn't have a formal education, right? But it was like through my relationship with her that I learned how to like show up for people, and like what family ties mean, and like and so I agree, right, that there's so many different forms of education, and that, you know, I think sometimes it can feel like we have to privilege like a formal higher education, but really there's so many different ways of growing in that way.
Absolutely. It's what does learning mean to you, and in what way can you seek learning? You know, sometimes people listen to this podcast, right? And they'll say, "Oh, this is
sometimes."
So well, I was going to do more examples. So
she's like, I don't know who listens.
I don't know who listens. Thank you for listening, and please don't turn it off yet. I promise. There was a complete like sentence in that.
Yeah.
But sometimes you listen to podcasts. Sometimes you read a book. Sometimes you talk to someone else. You know, there's all these ways of opening yourself up to knowledge.
I like how you said it, this idea of being curious.
Yeah.
Because I was like at work, the staff that I work with, I'm always challenging them, you know, be curious, you know, don't just walk through and accept things as they are. Like maybe something can be different. And I am learning that I don't know everything in that situation. And it really makes a difference. It takes a lot of the stress off of me thinking, you know, I got this, I know it all.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really excellent point. I think one of the things about learning and education or knowledge is this thing that you understand that you don't know everything. And you have to be okay with not knowing everything. You know, we're not going to be the end all be all. There's no way that we have enough time or capacity to do that. And so once we accept that, then we realize every moment can be a learning moment. Every conversation can be a tool in my growth, you know, in my recovery. And so these are the things that we have to lean into and be vulnerable. I think learning, being open to education, being open to connection, you have to be vulnerable. And that's scary.
Yeah. I love your use of the word growth here, because part of like, I think what you're saying is like education can be determined by asking yourself the question, how do I want to grow? Right. And then that can determine your trajectory. And maybe that means you're pursuing higher education. Maybe that means you're learning how to become a yoga instructor. Maybe it means you're learning how to do hair. Maybe it means you're learning how to become a community organizer, right? But it can all start with just asking yourself, how do I want to grow? So in your practice, have you worked with people who have made like major career changes while they've been in like therapy or in recovery?
That's usually when people want to make big changes.
Oh, say more. Yeah, say more.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, one of the things that when people are going through major shifts in their self, in their identity, and they feel that they're on a road to growth and recovery, and like you were saying, the world gets bigger, and now they want to be able to give to the world, because so many times they feel like I've been taking from so much from the world. I've been taking from emotionally, financially, whateverly, from my family, from my friends, from the community. And now that I'm on my path to my recovery, now that I'm on my path to my self-actualization, I want to give back. I want to give because I have taken so much. And so a lot of times people will try to do kind of the work that, like, social work and therapy. Like, you want to be who you have seen on the road to your space, to your growth.
It's like how we emulate our parents or whatever. It's we hold them on the pedestal. It's like, I've experienced that. And I think for me, like, the most amazing thing when I finally realized, no, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah. Like, maybe not.
Yeah.
Right. So you said you're coming up on 21 years of practice, which is a long time, but there's a lot of experience and there's a lot of like story in that. And so I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about, like, when working with people, what were successes and challenges? What did those look like for you when working with people, say, for example, in recovery?
So one of the things that I was doing as I was first coming up through my training as an MFT, not even graduated, was I was working with folks that were recently diagnosed with HIV or had family members that were diagnosed with HIV. And I distinctly remember one client that I was working with, and he had recently had the diagnosis, and I was one of the clinicians that was working in that kind of sector. And it comes to find out that he was, like, we would say conventionally handsome. And he had been severely abused by his father, his sibling, because he was more effeminate. The father would make the other sibling kind of beat him up to kind of make him more manly. And so it ended up that he had very, very low self-esteem. And so as soon as he could, he started drinking. He would sneak a drink here. He would sneak a drink there. No one's going to notice a drink from every bottle because it's too little.
Yeah.
And so sneaking a drink then became drinking on their own once they moved out. And then that became using drugs. And then that became, I needed the drugs to be able to have sex. And then it became the sex.
Yeah.
And so I got him at the tail end of that, because now after his diagnosis, he thought, well, everything's gone now. Like, I have nothing. I used to be able to drink, and I can't do that anymore. And I was doing drugs, and I couldn't do that because it would help me have sex, and I can't do that. And so what do I have? What am I going to do? And so for the work that we were doing, I think one of the biggest things that we needed to connect to was, and that's why I say, every adult was a kid. We were connecting back to that kid that used to get beat up all the time. And I would say, if we were to talk to him, because he's still there, every time that you have a moment of stress, every time that you have a moment of trauma, every time that you have a moment where you feel extremely overwhelmed, the person that is reacting is that little kid. It's not adult you. It's not adult you that now is going to the gym obsessively because you can't do any of the other things. So now you're living at the gym. It's that little kid that was getting beat up by his brother and being told to be beat up by the dad. And so what did he need? And so in finding what he needed, we were able to then work on adult him, because now young him felt secure. He felt safer. And so safer little him helped safer older him. And so that was, for me, even being able to look at the mirror for like 10 seconds without looking away was huge for him. I would say, well, look in the mirror. How long can you look in the mirror? Let's do it together. Don't look at me, look at you.
Yeah.
And even being able to say, who do you see in that mirror? Like, not, and it's like, oh, this one eye is too big and this one eye is too little and my lip is turning that way. No. Not just all your physical things, but who's there? in this moment, do you feel safe? Is it little you? Is it adult you? Is it a you that you don't recognize? Like, who is it? And that was just one of the steps that he was able to take as he was able to kind of move forward. And I think for me, I don't know if it sounds silly, but for me, a success was when he would come in and he was smiling. And it was a genuine smile. And knowing that a bad day didn't mean a bad life. And for me, that was a success. And I think about him a lot. I think, I hope he's doing well.
Yeah. What's striking to me about what you're saying is, and you've said this in a few different ways, is that the solution and answer is almost always love, right? Like it's love for that younger part of ourselves, love for the part of us that like wants to heal, love for the part of us that's like ready to grow and move past things. So, you've talked about, I think this is like a very interesting is not the right word, but and I was going to say interesting. I think it's a very heartfelt example. And it makes me wonder about, like, in your experience, how have you seen like trauma show up for people, especially like as it relates to being like LGBTQ plus identified?
How long do we have?
I know. We've got time.
You are. I know. That is a 10-pound question packed in a 5-pound bag. So trauma. So the way that I define trauma is that trauma is something that overwhelms your capacity to cope. And different people have different capacities to cope based on your history, based on, the things that have happened in your life, based on your coping skills. All of those things are different. I think of it like a cup, right? Some people come in with a larger cup like you have right here.
Yep.
Some of them have a smaller one. And so that's why some people have, pretend there was like a tiny, tiny cup. This is not indicative of anyone's coping, just using for example. But, that's why two people can go through the same thing and one of them feels severely traumatized and another person doesn't, because it might have completely flooded someone's cup. And the other one was like, well, it almost hit the top, but I think I'm okay. And so one of the things that I've seen the way trauma work out, especially within our LGBTQI plus communities, is that very often we're already running around with some liquid in our cup. We're already running around with stuff, that we maybe haven't had the opportunity to kind of spill and like, pour it out. And so then what happens is if we're walking around with a cup that's already a quarter full, something happens and it's another quarter. Now our cup is half full. So then when something bigger happens, what would have probably not overflowed it, now it's a mess everywhere.
Right.
And so what do? We pretend that it's not there. We pretend that we're fine because acknowledging that the cup has spilled over, acknowledging that there are some things that might need to get cleaned up so that we have a cup that's okay, or even doing the work to grow our cup is scary. And if you haven't had examples like that before, if you haven't had people to support you and say, you know what, it's spilled, but let's help you clean it up. Let's help you pour some of that out. If you haven't had that, then every time it spills, it feels like a catastrophe because it is.
Right.
And so, especially within LGBTQI plus communities, I talk a lot about minority stress. And so basically that's a theory that because of an already existing marginalized identity, we're already experiencing stigma. We're already experiencing bias. We're already experiencing stress. So I'm married, and my wife is Puerto Rican. We might be cousins.
Oh, okay.
We may be cousins.
It's very possible.
It's very, very possible. We can have an entire different podcast on Spanish from Puerto Rico and Spanish from Mexico.
Yeah,
I needed a translator the first time I went to Puerto Rico. But I love it. But there's different things and spaces like so. I have to always think, can I walk down the street holding my wife's hand?
Yeah.
I identify a little more masculine of center. And so for me, center is more androgynous and I identify a little more masculine of that. My wife is pretty feminine. And so, we don't really look like, best friends going to get a yogurt. And so I work.
Stop.
Although we could, I love froyo.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go to Pinkberry any day. But I'm afraid. So if I am afraid, if I hold her hand in a certain place, my cup is already going to start filling.
Yeah.
And so if something huge happened, I would already have less capacity to cope.
Yeah.
And so we have to realize that the way to be able to facilitate healing is to always assess to see if there has been trauma, if there have been things that have overwhelmed your capacity to cope. If now the cup that you thought you had feels like it shrunk.
Yeah.
How do we grow it?
I was listening to that and I was thinking, where does the drugs and alcohol or the bad behavior or whatever, where does that come in? Because we're in a healthy situation, like you said, we'd be looking for ways to grow the cup or to get rid of some of the liquid. But unfortunately, we don't have that information. We use things like drugs and alcohol that we think is healing us or getting us ready for healing, and it's actually doing more damage.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my cup analogy, right?
I love it. But, come back to the cup.
You know, like Stanley cups, right?
Yeah.
They're double insulated.
Not
so you
Stanley
think that
cup.
they're gonna, I know.
It's okay.
I'm a Hydro Flask person.
Yeah, me too.
You know, this isn't being sponsored, but
neither one of those brands is
nobody
sponsoring.
sponsors us, but Hydro
if you're
Flask
interested,
for
if you want to send us, like,
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you. Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, I'm like a chipmunk. I see something shiny, I go over to there, and I'm like, oh yay!
Yeah, twinsies.
Yay! I'm all Stanley Cup. Okay, let's do a Hydro Flask, right?
Hydro Flask.
Sometimes you see these double-walled, like tumblers or cups or whatever, and you think it holds more liquid than it does, but it doesn't. And so, drugs, alcohol, sex, anything that'll fill that, it gives you, it makes you think your cup is bigger, but in reality, it's shrinking it because it's taking away other spaces for you. Because then it becomes about, you know, the next hit, or becomes about the next drink. Because why? I'm making your cup bigger.
Yeah.
You know? And so it fits in a space where it feels like it might be helping you cope, but in reality, it's actually making it kind of smaller.
Yeah. Oh, I love your analogy. Yeah. I'm going to leave here talking about cups. But yeah, I love your...
I tell people I talk in pictures.
I love a picture.
No, I think
I love a picture.
I think it's brilliant because it's like, more than not, you can understand. It's like, especially if I'm a visual, if I can see it or if I can visualize it, I'm I get it. I'm over here like, hey, when this one's talking, when Anthony's talking,
hey, wah, 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 wah. It's like the Peanuts when it's like, of course I did my homework. Wah, 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 wah. I don't know what happened.
It's because my voice is so soothing.
Oh, that's why I don't turn it off.
Okay.
I am thoroughly soothed.
I'm happy. Well, you said something earlier that you wrote down that I want you to say, because it's so related to what you were just talking about. I was like, this would be a perfect opportunity.
I had to flip the page.
Yeah. Do you remember what you said?
It said that, we were talking about
the cups.
We're talking about addiction, and now we're going back to the cups. And I had said, the thing, I'm gonna have to read it because there you go. We are going there. It says the thing that wants to kill you is whispering in your ear that it's the only one that loves you.
Yeah. Oh, that makes me emotional.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I feel like there's so many, like when we think about like 12-step, for example, and there's like a 4th step where you do this fearless moral inventory of yourself. And there's a way that looking at that stuff can feel like it's undoing you. And so much of it for such a long time, like these different behaviors that people believed, was making their cup bigger, believed was helping them. There's a kind of grieving process that has to happen when you realize like, no, actually, this isn't the love that I thought it was. Yeah. So what are some of the strategies that you've found, like among clients that you've worked with or in your work in general, that have been, I guess, the most generative for some of the people that you've worked with?
Oh, I know. Let me. I'm like, that's
also your opinion.
These are such big questions.
Mm-hmm.
No, I love it, but they're really big questions. So my brain is having to funnel it into one sentence. It may sound really kind of pedestrian, but you have to kind of start where they're at, and you have to begin with the end in mind, right?
Oh.
Because think of it like a treasure map, right? If you don't know where the X is, or if you don't have an inkling where the X is, you're just going to be wandering around that island. So it's important to begin with the end in mind. And sometimes they might not know it. It's like, okay, well, give me a guess. And if it changes along the way, then it changes along the way. And so if we begin with that, then we have a destination. And so and then they select the destination. I don't tell them, oh, you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to, because that's not my life. And I also let them know that they're the ones that are in charge of their treatment. And when you feel so powerless in so many avenues of your life, and you come into this space where supposedly like this expert is going to help you, to be able to be told, you're the expert of your life, and I'm here to walk with you in your healing, that in itself can be something that is completely unheard of for someone. If you've always been told, you're a loser, you're a this, you're a that, you're going to, I always tell people, you only need someone to tell you something so many times before that voice in your head becomes yours and not theirs.
Yeah.
So they come in thinking, I am all of these things and none of them are lovable. I am all of these things and none of them are worthy. And so of course you're going to reach for the drink. Of course you're going to go and get your next hit. Why? Because again, it's telling you no one loves you but me. And when you go in there and say, whoever you are is absolutely okay, it begins to kind of dismantle that hold that kind of fake love has.
Yeah.
And then it leaves you room to start growing a new love for yourself.
Yeah. One of the most powerful things that was ever said to me by it was a colleague. I went to him. This is when I was a baby clinician. I'm still a baby clinician, but when I was a baby clinician, I remember I was going to supervision and I was talking about a case and he stopped me and he goes, Anthony, there's nothing wrong with you. And then I was going to talk and he goes, Anthony, there's nothing wrong with you. And he said it a third time. And then I was like, oh shit, no one's ever told me there's nothing wrong with me, within that kind of context. Yeah. That brought up that memory for me. Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing here too is I'm thinking a lot about community, right? And the ways that people can cultivate strength in themselves. And so I'm wondering, what do you think the role of community is in healing?
Community is everything. It is. It's everything, because there has to be something after you leave my office or after we turn off the Zoom or whatever, because even if we meet every day, it's only going to be 7 hours a week. How many more hours of the week do you have? And so in that time, there needs to be something else, someone else that can help fill those spaces with something positive, with something affirming, with something that can just kind of hold that space. Because if not, your old patterns will try to find a way to sneak into those spaces. I think of it like rocks, and you try to pour sand in. The sand is going to get into, if you've ever been to the beach and you wear jeans, there's going to get in everywhere.
Yeah.
That's why I don't go to the beach.
That's why you don't go to the
beach.
It's like you avoid the water.
That's why I don't wear jeans.
That's why you don't wear jeans.
Yeah.
It's like a stereotype. Yeah, I'm not going. It gets in my hair.
But, I think of these habits like sand, right? They just fill in the crevices, and then it's so hard to get rid of them. And then you think, well, I thought I had gotten rid of all the sand, and it's like, nope, it's still there. And so community is that space that helps fill these things in with warmth, with comfort, with support, with love.
On that same token, and I love the idea of the community and making sure you have something outside of what you do, but how do you prepare them to turn away from things that are toxic? Because what if that community is creating
Oh, I'm gonna go into another analogy there.
Let's hear it. I'm ready for him.
I think of like systems theory a lot. And so systems theory, I think of all of us and in our communities like a grandfather clock, right? You look at this grandfather clock and there's all these gears. And each gear is a specific shape because it needs to do a specific job to keep the clock moving. And so what happens in anything, in any kind of growth, in any kind of, we talk about education, we talk about, recovery. It's like if you take out a piece of that machine and you change its shape. And so sometimes you can insert it back into the machine and the machine is going to adjust. But if it doesn't adjust, then that's going to break. And so then you have to start making steps in your life to find where this cog now fits. Because if you want your life to work and you're trying to shove it into the old space, it's not going to work. And change is hard because, you might be afraid of, you might be afraid of change. So then you slide back to your old behaviors. Then you stop being afraid of change. Now you're afraid of failing because you got over that fear of change. Now you're afraid to fail. So what do? You make yourself slide back because I'd rather it be my choice than me really want to, and I don't. And then finally, which kind of sounds not counterintuitive, but you could be afraid of success.
Oh, 100%.
Because if you walk through that door and you're different, that means the things around you have to be different.
Yeah.
What if you live with your dealer? What if your family is struggling in their own addiction? What if the only reason that you even liked your boyfriend is because you guys got high together? Like all of these things. And so sometimes if they're not ready to kind of make that move past that, then the fear of success might make them slide back.
Yeah.
And so it's by preparing them and saying, hey, let's find community. You're not in this alone. So in the time that we meet, what would community, if you had a magic wand and poof, community was there, what would it look like? So let's try to find if there's something like that or the closest proximity to it. And let's see what that does.
Yeah, that's I love this take on community because I'm thinking about how community can pull you in any direction. So for example, I'm thinking about like some of the clients that I've worked with, and I was talking to one, I'm thinking one from last year, and a lot of cannabis use. It was cannabis-induced psychosis. And then when the idea was like explored about whether or not this person would feel comfortable stopping, the first thing they thought about was, yeah, but I would have to change all of my friends. Right. And similarly, like when I think about recovery now, a lot of like my own recovery is like grounded in the people that I know that are sober and who are doing very similar work to me.
I love that saying. The only thing that you have to change is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Just that one thing.
Yeah, just that one thing.
That one everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And earlier too, I was thinking about going back to the cup analogy. We might as well just call this the cup episode.
The cup.
Please don't call it the cup episode. That can go so many ways.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Maybe it wouldn't have, but now it will. So I'm sorry.
And I totally forgot what I was going to say. I told you it was going to happen.
It was going to happen.
I was thinking about equity. Right. And how your take on equity, I mean, you didn't use that word, but I was thinking about, this has to do with equity, right? So the other side of that is because you're talking about like a person's ability to handle like stress, right? And if someone, okay, so there's that part, right? The other side of that, when we're thinking about recovery or any kind of material success, right? There's also an equity that happens there. Right? Because different people are starting at different spots, right? Like if you have all the resources in the world, it's going to be very easy for you to kind of like maybe step into an institution of higher learning, right? Or it might be easier for you to like find therapy or treatment, right? And so I think, the kind of subtext of this is also, I'm thinking about like the intersection of like poverty and identity. Yeah, going back to ideas of minority stress.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. The only person that can really give you an accurate measure of success is you, because you're the only one that knows, the steps that you've taken. I always tell my clients, just being here, it means that you're already stronger than you even think, because you've made it in the door, or you've turned on the computer, or you sent me back a text. Like that is strength. So that is a success. And I think especially in society, success has to be like this big wow. Like you got the big job, or you won the lottery. Like it has to be like a big thing to be like, look, everyone, I'm successful. It has to be the nice car and the nice job and the nice suit and the nice this. You wake up today. Yes, success. Did you get out of bed? Yes, success. There are a million things that can happen in every single day that would feel like if I didn't do this, and I failed. And I have all sorts of thoughts about that, because a slip isn't a fall, and in a fall you can get back up. So even that idea of failure for me, I'm like, no, it's a slip, it's a fall. Do you want to get back up? Okay, then that's what we do. But your success has to be self-defined, because if someone else is defining success for you, not only is that, giving up power of your space of like, look at it, I did this thing. Isn't this great? And they're like, no, you have to do this thing to be successful.
Right.
No. So define your own success. Celebrate the small things, because every inch makes a foot, every foot makes a yard, and after yards make a mile. And we're so caught up in society to look at the big touchdown, the goal, the checkered flag, that you don't realize that if you hadn't even gone 1 inch out of the racetrack or something. I'm so sporty, guys, trust me.
It's okay.
So sporty, everyone.
Yeah.
But if you haven't even made it out the gate, you haven't even shot the ball, or you haven't even swung the bat, like, that's a success. All of those minute things are successes. So, I mean, that was a really long answer to a short question.
That's a perfect answer to
it's true, because
the
thing that I constantly have to remind myself to look at where I was, to compare myself to where I was, so that like I'm measuring me based on me. Because if I look at what other people are doing, I'm missing the mark. Yeah.
I forgot again. There was something. What was it? The last thing you said.
Oh, I forgot too.
That's fine. Let's move on.
Okay.
Let's be present.
We are present.
Yeah.
I have a question.
You are a president. You are both.
Hey,
Jeff Jordan.
Hey.
That's our producer.
Awesome. So with everything that you're talking about, right? And I think that people are working on this, especially in recovery, slowly and surely, when they finally get to a place where they do feel success.
Yes.
Where do we go from here?
Maintenance is the hardest part. Because if you're jumping for the brass ring, it's like, now that I got it, what do I do with it? And I think it's important to understand that, we make these kind of micro goals for ourselves in our life, and knowing that, being able to just be present, being able to kind of connect to your own space of humanity, being able to connect with your own space of self. Those are successes. So, there are times, by a lot of kind of metrics, I'm humble brag, I swear it's not, but I'm successful, right? You would say that, looking at my resume, I would look successful, but there are some days where I have to tell myself, you got this. You got this. And if you can make it through the day, it's been a success. And so I think we have to reconceptualize what success means, because it's not just like the end of the road and like fireworks. If you've reached it, that means that you have opportunities for new goals and different goals.
I think opens the door for like educating yourself on something you're interested in.
So you earlier, before the episode started, I was actually talking to Billy Lemon, our executive director, and we were talking about the owning of success and how that can be difficult. That's certainly something. I mean, like, even like in the way you brought it up, like a humble brag, but it's like, but it
wasn't a humble brag. Yeah, I know, I get it.
You know what I mean? But there's like an ownership there, that I think for folks who may not like come from a background where that was either expected or talked about or what have you, it can be very hard to like own a success and to like internalize that. I'm wondering if you had any thoughts about that.
I think, and actually that was something that I was talking about earlier. Because, I was having a discussion of like imposter syndrome and what is that and what's this and what's that. Sometimes, and then I can only speak for myself, but, growing up in spaces where if I would walk into a space, I was the only one that looked like me. I was the only one who identified like me. Then I begin to think, well, should I be in this room? And so now I have to think, well, where did it come? My parents never told me I shouldn't. They should say, kick ass, take names. And I'm like, yes. But then I get into these spaces and I'm like, should I? Why am I getting the thought that I shouldn't be here? And then I had to fight against that. And I think when we're looking at these spaces, we have to realize that, we belong in any space that we're in. We don't need permission to be able to exist. We don't need permission to feel accomplished. And the minute that we give other people that power to say to you, you're not accomplished enough, you're not good enough, you're not this enough, you're not that enough, we give them that power. And so I work on being able to claim that space and say, you know what, even if I am the only one that, looks like me, thinks like me, identifies like me, I'm here. And so me being here hopefully has another person coming in, with me. and then we can bring more, and then there's more. And then we take it over. Sorry,
Careful.
I was going on there. Sorry.
You take a moment.
Are you trying to get us banned?
No. I know, right? I'm sorry. I was just going on a no, but I think
you felt it.
I felt it. No, I think that we need to remind ourselves that we know more than we think we know.
Yeah,
we're more capable than we think we are, and we deserve more than we think we do.
Yeah.
And if we're able to remember that, then it helps us be in spaces where even if other people don't think we belong, we are able to own that space of ourselves.
I love that so much. I have no follow-up to that. I'm going to think about that later. Yeah. So, we're going to start landing the plane here. But before we do that, I'm wondering what's next for you.
Already?
It's been,
Time to put my tray table up. And
yeah, exactly. It's amazing how fast.
Yeah.
Like once we start.
Yeah. So we'll have to have you come back then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's next for you? Any exciting projects? Anything that you want to share with our listeners?
I will always shout out my school, Pacific Oaks College. We are located in Pasadena. Southern California.
Oh, lovely.
But we do have our online programs. So we have our marriage and family therapy program. We also have like a school of education, a school of human development. So if thinking about, I think, formal education is something that I would be even interested in looking at. I went to Pacific Oaks and I think I turned out okay. I think I turned out great. See, this is owning it. I turned out great.
Yeah.
So I'm always, encourage folks that if they have any questions, you can look at pacificoaks.com, edu, or is it edu? pacificoaks.edu. And it'll show you all of our programs. There might be some videos of me in there. It's so weird watching me, but there we go. But yeah, I really, really do appreciate the two of you having me here. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Dr. Eugenia, this has been absolutely amazing. I'm so glad you said yes.
Yes.
And thank you again.
Yeah. So the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help change lives by supporting personal growth.
And our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community opportunity and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcasts.
And please find us everywhere you listen to podcasts, including our YouTube channel. And also every Monday we have new episodes. So get excited.
Yeah. Or don't get excited, but still listen.
Yeah.
And we're done. That was fantastic.